She wasn't a criminal. She didn't steal, kill, or betray her kingdom. She simply spoke too much, or loved the wrong man, or asked too many questions. And for that, she was tortured. Her body became the battlefield where obedience was beaten into silence. This is not a tale of war or rebellion. This is the forgotten war waged against women in the name of morality, religion, and control. Tonight, we open the iron gates of the past and walk through the shadowy halls where justice wore a mask of cruelty. We revisit the stories of women who were punished not for crimes, but for courage, the Middle Ages. A time romanticized for knights, honor, castles, and chivalry. But beneath the myths lies a truth far darker, especially for women. To be born a woman during this time was to inherit fear. You were not free. You were watched. You were controlled. If you questioned too much, loved too freely, or spoke too loudly, you became a problem. And medieval society had many ways of handling problems. Not through understanding or dialogue, but through punishment, through pain. Torture was not just about inflicting physical harm. It was a form of public control, a message sent to every woman watching, stay in line. Or this could be you. It looked like something from a nightmare. A metal helmet, heavy and cruel, with a plate forced deep into the mouth. This was the Scold's Bridle, also called the Brank. Its purpose? To silence women who dared to speak too much, challenge authority, or simply be loud. Agnes from Kent was one such woman. She wasn't a criminal. She simply argued with her husband in public. She called him a drunk and questioned how he spent her dowry. For this, she was dragged to the town square and locked into the bridle. The metal plate jammed her tongue, making speaking, even swallowing, agonizing. Bells hung from the mask, so everyone would hear her coming. Children threw stones. Men spat. When they finally removed it, she couldn't speak for weeks. Some say she never truly spoke again. The lesson was simple. In a man's world, a woman's voice was dangerous. It was used in darkness, in dungeons, in courtrooms, and even churches. The breast ripper was a clawed instrument, forged from iron and heated until red hot. Then it was applied to a woman's chest. For what crime? Being accused of adultery, or seducing a man of power, or practicing witchcraft. Johanna of Bavaria, a young woman known for her beauty, was rumored to have had a secret relationship with a priest. There was no proof, just a whisper, just a jealous rival. That was enough. The claw was placed on her bare skin, and with one pull, it tore through her flesh. She screamed for her mother. She called out to God, but the only answer was more iron. Her body died that night, but her story lived on, spoken in secret by other women. The river ran cold even in summer. That was where they placed the ducking stool, a wooden seat strapped to a lever. Women suspected of witchcraft, sorcery, or simply defying tradition were tied to it and lowered repeatedly into freezing water. Sometimes until they confessed, sometimes until they died. Eleanor, a midwife from a small village, had saved many lives. But one birth went wrong. The baby didn't survive. Suddenly, she was a witch. Neighbors turned on her. The priest called her a devil's servant. 17 times, they dunked her under. She didn't drown, but her heart broke that day. She never delivered another child again. It was not just criminals who sat upon the iron chair, covered in sharp spikes. This chair was designed to torture and extract confessions. Even the act of sitting on it caused excruciating pain. Anna of Normandy was a healer. She used herbs and prayers to treat illness. The church saw her as a threat. She was brought before the council, accused of heresy. They stripped her of her name, her dignity, and forced her onto the iron chair. She didn't scream at first, but as the hours passed and her blood soaked the spikes, she began to beg. Not for her life, but for the truth to be known. She said, "I healed. I never harmed." Those were her last words. Some punishments were done in secret, in cold stone rooms where no witnesses could hear the screams. Thumbscrews crushed the fingers until bones shattered. The rack stretched limbs until joints tore apart. Martha, just 17, was caught reading. The book was about plants and healing. They claimed it was sorcery. On the rack, she cried for mercy. But mercy had no place in medieval dungeons. She confessed to flying at night, to speaking with demons, all just to make the pain stop. She died that night, her arms too damaged to fold across her chest. They buried her in a nameless grave. But her story, like so many others, refused to stay buried. Asterisk, all of these devices had one purpose, not justice, not truth, but control. They weren't used just to punish crimes. They were used to enforce silence, to remind women that their thoughts, their voices, their desires were dangerous. And if they forgot, the iron would remind them. Asterisk, she wore no armor. She held no sword. Her battle was survival, and her enemy wasn't a dragon. It was a society built to break her spirit. This is the second part of a story that is not just history, it is memory, etched in iron, blood, and the silence of forgotten women. We now return to the dark chapters of the Middle Ages, where even a heartbeat could be punished. Asterisk, it was circular, made of iron, forced between the jaws to keep the mouth open. The ring gag was used to humiliate and silence women accused of deceit or manipulation. Often, it was paired with verbal abuse or public ridicule. Sometimes, objects were forced into the mouth to increase shame. Lydia of Wiltshire had spoken out about a lord's cruelty. He had taken her sister. To silence her, the ring gag was used. People laughed. No one heard her cries. And when it was removed, her jaw never closed right again. Asterisk, this was a wooden yoke that trapped a woman's neck and wrists together, immobilizing her. Two women could be locked into the same device face to face, forced to resolve arguments while humiliated in public. The shrew's fiddle, they called it. Mira and Leanne were sisters-in-law. One day, they fought over food. Their husbands decided to teach them a lesson. They were paraded through the village, locked into the same yoke, unable to lower their heads. For 3 days, they had to eat, sleep, and relieve themselves in front of others. They never spoke again. Not out of hate, out of shared trauma. Some wounds don't bleed. The shame of public punishment was its own torture. The stocks, the pillory, the parade of guilt. Women had to wear signs of their crimes. Some were shaved bald. Others were stripped of clothes, dignity, and names. They were made examples. A girl caught dancing in a graveyard. A woman who laughed too loud at a sermon. A widow who refused remarriage. Their punishment wasn't always death, but it was a death of self. Asterisk, because they were seen as weaker. Because they were believed to be temptresses. Because patriarchy feared them. A man could fight in war, drink, cheat, and still be forgiven. But a woman who lived freely? She was dangerous. So religion painted her as sinful. Society painted her as emotional. And the law punished her into submission. These devices were not tools of justice. They were weapons of fear. Asterisk, yet even in this darkness, women resisted. They told stories in whispers. They wrote symbols in secret. They taught daughters not just how to survive, but how to remember. A look, a touch, a lullaby, all became acts of rebellion. Some escaped. Some healed others in hiding. Some wrote diaries that historians found centuries later. They lived in silence, but they did not surrender. Asterisk, the devices are no longer used. But the mindset? In many places, it still lingers. Women are told to smile, to obey, to lower their voice. Their ambition is still questioned. Their anger still punished. So we tell these stories not to relive the pain, but to honor those who could not speak. They weren't witches. They weren't sinners. They were human beings. And they deserved better. Let their screams become our stories. Let their silence become our voice. Asterisk.